Here we go. Welcome. Happy Friday to you. I think it's Friday. Yeah. So the meeting is called Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness. And so we'll start by try to be somewhat systematic about this. So let's start by looking at if we could, I think, broadly categorize experience as there's, we could say, external and internal. So we could say external would be the external circumstances. So what's happening around us? So for example, you notice if the weather. Okay, so if you notice that you don't like the weather. So you're not in, the weather doesn't seem to be inside of you. So you say that's an external experience, external circumstance. Or we could say that somebody, you have neighbors, let's say, who are making a lot of noise, or maybe people who live with you who are making a lot of noise. Or there's a lot of noise happening around you and you find that noise to be bothersome. So these are external, that's an external experience. Okay, so these external experiences or external circumstances, we want to be able to, we think that oftentimes we think we're going to need to get those under control because those are causing me a great deal of trouble. But of course, you see that you're unable to control those things. I mean, hopefully that's clear. But maybe it's not clear. So it's useful to look at that so that can become clear. Because truthfully, the majority of the people in the world, that's not clear to the majority of the people in the world. And so there's an awful lot of warfare that takes place because people are convinced that these external things must be controlled. Other people must be controlled. Others, whatever is not the self, must be controlled. So we want to get clear on that, because if we're not clear on that, then we waste our whole life. Really, I mean, hopefully that you just can see that that's true. You waste your whole life, because what on earth is the point? Spend an entire lifetime trying to control what's uncontrollable, and by the way, which wouldn't even give you what you want. So just see, first of all, the complete impossibility of controlling what is external. You can't control the weather, and you can't control other people. I was reading some essays by a Shin, well, I don't know if he would really call himself a Shin Buddhist, but Suichi Maeda is his name, and he's a Japanese philosopher, Buddhist, in the early part of the last century. And he described in one of these essays, this is, I suppose at that time, at least in Japanese culture, I'm assuming from the writing, he said, and he's writing to a male audience, he says, your wife, when you were married, pledged her obedience to you. I guess that was a Japanese custom at the time. He says, but you can't control even her. And anybody who has children knows, you try as you might, you cannot control them. So even those who are closest to us can't be controlled. So the weather can't be controlled, people can't be controlled. If you have a dog or a cat, you know, you can't control them. So much for these external experiences. We have there's no possibility of controlling them. Now, let's take a look at these internal experiences. So internal would be our feeling states, thoughts, just whatever we would consider to be our self. Now, we'd like to think that we can get that under control, but actually the bad news is, well, it's not bad news. It's bad news, good news, is that take a look at this and you'll see, okay, that this whole, it was a setup from the very beginning. You see, this division is completely false. So take a look and see that all of these external experiences, the experience is not external. It's just thought to be external, but the actual experience is completely what we could say is internal. So if there's the sound that's supposedly bothering you, it's not the sound that's bothering you, it's the bothering that's bothering you. That bothering is happening, we could say, internally. It's not happening externally, certainly. If it was happening externally, if somebody else is bothered, let's say, you're not bothered. Because there's always somebody who's bothered. I mean, on a planet with billions of people, you're guaranteed there's always somebody bothered. And if you've ever had one instant in which you were not bothered, then you know that somebody else being bothered is not a bother to you. So it's the bothering itself that's the bother. You're bothered by being bothered. It's not anything external. So now we can actually see, we can just completely collapse that false division and realize that the external and the internal are one. Because if somebody else doesn't obey you, or somebody doesn't behave the way you want them to behave, it's not the behavior actually that is the problem. It's your own experience. So then when we see that all of this is collapsed, then what applies to the external also applies to the internal. And you see, no matter how much you try to control the internal, well, it's always this internal, so-called, that you've been trying to control. And even when you were projecting it out there, and you never had any success with it, you can't manage it, because by the time you're aware of it, it already is. So if you're bothered, well, the bother's already there. There's already bother. Now you're bothered about being bothered. And now you're bothered about being bothered about being bothered, and on and on and on. So it can't be controlled because it already is. It's completely wild. So look at this sense of there being a problem, this disturbance, this problem, this upset, this frustration, worry, anxiety, fear, whatever you want to call it. We call it by so many names, but it's just a sense that something's not right. And what is that? isn't it really just that, isn't it only that there's a notion that it should be otherwise? Isn't this internal, so-called internal, no different from the weather? So it's one day it's cloudy and rainy, and you have a thought, oh, it shouldn't be like this. So it seems to be a problem. It's the same. Internally, there's just some state of things, and then a notion that it shouldn't be this way. Now, I do want to be clear that this is an invitation for looking directly. So this is very different than just thinking about it. Because if you think about it, it's never ending. You just keep thinking. You have to see there's no resolution there. You can think your way forever. But this is about, it's not about getting rid of thinking. It's not about stopping thinking. It's not about battling with thinking. Thinking is not the enemy. It's just that to recognize that thinking is just, it's limited. And what you're looking for isn't what's limited. So this is an invitation to look directly at that which is inclusive of everything. So it's what is, we could say, prior to the thinking, inclusive of the thinking. So thinking isn't an obstacle. Thinking doesn't obstruct anything. But just to notice that prior to the thinking, during the thinking, after the thinking, there's this, which you are, and you can just notice this. So look directly for yourself and see what's being pointed to, so that you can notice it's just this, there's a phenomenon that I'm pointing to, which is just that there's this kind of like, as a voice of discontent, a subtle voice of discontent that we identify as, that it's like, is constantly saying, this isn't right, not this, not this, don't like this isn't the right circumstance, not the right condition, not yet. And we just go along with it. And if we go along with it, then we're trying to control. So again, this meeting is called Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness. So what does this have to do with relaxation? Okay. It has to do with relaxation because this is about recognizing how much effort goes into this constant monitoring, constant rejection, constant trying, constant fixing, constant denying, constant struggle. It's all based on very flimsy, a very flimsy foundation. But we just don't look often enough, or closely enough, or directly enough to recognize this. So just look now and see there's no real foundation for this. It's just a claim without any evidence to back it up. It's just a claim. that says, this shouldn't be, this isn't right, this isn't good, there's a problem. And if you question it, notice there it's vicious. It's like a trapped animal that will turn on you. It will start shouting at you. How dare you challenge me? It feels bad. That's how I know that it's not okay. It feels bad. It gets really self-righteous. So it has to do with relaxation, because you see how much effort is involved. And you see that all of that effort is it is the only thing we can call bondage. Apart from that effort, there is nothing we can call bondage. So we are doing our own bondage through this strain, and the relaxation is what is transcendent of that strain, and that is you. So you can just recognize that. So now said we would try to do this systematically. So let's kind of review what we've covered so far. So we started by looking at, well, what is this? We can even let's take one step back from that just to set the stage. So what is it that, what is it that is happening? What is it that we are concerned with? Why are we here? And we're here, we're concerned. The reason why we're interested in this conversation or this inquiry is because we have some concern about our own experience. Have some concern that there's something wrong with our experience, something lacking, deficient, broken, bad. Maybe we dress that up and say, oh, no, not me. My life is pretty good. It's not bad. I wouldn't categorize it as bad. I just think it could be better. Okay, fine. But it's still, the point remains. Something deficient, something lacking, something not quite right. And if how you view it as this is terrible, or you view it as it's pretty good, but it could be better. Either way, it's the same, which is there's some deficiency, something off. So that's why we're here. That's the concern that brings us here. There's a sense that something not quite right, something could be better. I'm not sure how to fix things so that I can be okay. And by the way, we want eternal okayness. We don't want just another temporary experience, because we know that those temporary experiences are not ultimately satisfying. Because we've had plenty of temporary experiences. Temporary experiences are cheap. You can have a temporary experience in so many ways. I mean, you get a piece of candy, you have an experience. You look at how people go through their lives, what they do trying to get these experiences. So we could list them out. there's they're sensory experiences, right? So, well, a lot of them are sensory experiences. So they want to have, want to have certain tastes or sensual experiences. So people eat. They, not, I mean, eating, we do eating for nourishment, but then there's also eating for getting these experiences. So that's one way in which people do it. Another way in which people do it is sex. Another way in which people do it is through intoxication. Another way people do it is through visual stimulation. So they want, look at art, go travel, see different sites, or auditory stimulation. So listening to things, music. I also could go traveling to listen to different things in different places. Then we can get into more sort of cerebral kinds of things. So acquisition of knowledge or acquisition of power. So various kinds of acquisition. Oh, and then just objective acquisition, just acquiring things. That's another one. So you can see how you've done all these things. We've all done all these things. They're not inherently bad. So I'm not saying any of these things are inherently bad. They're fine. They're part of the human experience, but we've had enough of these experiences that we recognize none of them will give me what I really want. Because all of them are temporary. No matter how many of them you get, no matter how many things you acquire, it's the experience of it is temporary, because you get the thing and it only is temporary. You think, you look at these ultra wealthy people and you think, how much more money do they need? Well, they keep needing more because however much they have, that doesn't do it anymore. You've got 10 houses. Well, the 10th house was only interesting for the first little while, but now it doesn't do it for you anymore. You need now you need an 11th house. Got 100 cars and the 100th car doesn't do it for you anymore. Now you need 101 cars. So we know that none of these things will give us what we really want, because what we want is something that's not temporary. And so we know that what we want is not actually an experience, because all experiences by definition are temporary. They're transient. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that's the context. That's why we're here. So we have this realization that it seems like something seems to be off. I seem to be trapped, stuck in this vicious cycle of suffering or unhappiness or discontent, or something's not quite right. I've examined all of the things that I've tried in my life in order to deal with this, and none of them I at least to some degree have discovered that I don't believe any of those usual strategies are going to really give me what I want, because all of them only lead to temporary experiences. So that's the context. Now, clearly, therefore, our experience is what's concerning us. It can't be anything else. It's not somebody else's experience. And we could say, well, it's what I'm not experiencing. Well, okay, but then it's your experience of not experiencing that is troubling you. So it's the experience that's troubling you. Now, that's all just the setup. Then we say, okay, let's look at, since the experiences are where we seem to be having the trouble is look at the experience, and we can see that all this experience, just to kind of have a way to get our foot in the door, we can see how can we categorize this so we can kind of start to bite off something to chew. Well, we could say experience is either external or internal. This is where we were starting. And then we look at external experience and we see, well, what does the problem seem to be with the external experience? And the problem seems to be that I'm bothered by all of these things, but I have the notion that if I could only control them, then I wouldn't be bothered, but I don't seem to be able to get any control. Or at the very least, I don't have enough control. No matter how much control I get, it's not enough control because I can't control everything. Even if I could control, every half the people on the planet, which, I can't, but even if I could, there's still the other half that I can't control, which is, the problem that we see. We can just use our intelligence and recognize that seems to be what happens. And you say, well, we've got, our empire has everything under control, but there's all those who are outside of the empire who still are a thorn in our side. We need to be able to control them too. So we've got to expand the empire. And that's just, in our own little ways, what we try to do. We try to expand our personal empires to be able to have greater control, but we end up only being confronted with our powerlessness. We have no ability to control anything. It's all the worse when we have the illusion that we have some control, and then that comes tumbling down. Then we fall into a deep depression because we say, oh, I thought I had it under control and now I don't. So in a lot of ways, it's better when we don't even start with that delusion that we have that control. It's much harder to start with the delusion and then have to lose it. But to some degree, we all have to go through that process where we think we have some control, even if it's a very small amount of control. And then we have to go through the process of discovering that we don't have that control. So, so externally, we don't have control. Internally, then we think, well, maybe surely I have control internally. Okay, fine, I can't control the outside, but damn it, I'm going to control the inside. And that's going to be my salvation. That's got to be what I'm going to do. I'm going to seclude myself. I'm going to shut my eyes. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to get all of this chaos within under control. Well, it keeps on crumbling. So you keep letting it crumble. And the good news here is that this is finally, this is a rare message, because most places you go, you're going to get a different message, which is you just keep getting it under control. Work harder. You've almost got it. You're almost there. There's a million steps, but you've only got 100,000 left to go. You're almost there. Just keep taking those steps. So close. But what happens is, and that's part of the process, we have to go through that, but that is it leads us on until we get close enough that we realize that it's like, I've mentioned this before, one of Zeno's paradoxes. Zeno was I think that's got to be Greek philosopher. And one of his paradoxes is that I should reread it. It's been a long time, so I don't remember who it was. Some mythical character who's very fast is going to have a race with a tortoise. This is, let the tortoise get a head start, because the tortoise is slow. And then this fast guy is going to be able to overtake the tortoise, surely. But Zeno says, well, you think so, but once the tortoise has a head start, then after a certain amount of time, then this fast guy is going to be able to halve that distance, right? So the tortoise has traveled X distance, the fast guy is going to travel X over 2 in a certain amount of time, just logically, obviously. And then in another amount of time, he'll be able to have that distance. So then, 3x over 4. And then in some amount of time, he's going to be able to have that distance. But now, all the while, even though the tortoise is slow, the tortoise is still moving a little bit. So no matter how much this fast guy continues, he's never going to even catch up with the tortoise, much less overtake the tortoise. It seems to defy common sense, but nobody's been able to disprove it, even to today. It's been thousands of years. People have tried. Can't disprove it. So this is the situation we find ourselves in, actually, is that the closer the more distance we cover in this illusory progression towards purification or perfection or achievement or acquisition, or however we conceive of it, no matter how much distance we cover, we never are going to arrive at it. It's always out of reach. And at first, we have the illusion, we're allowed to have the illusion that I'm going to get there. I'm going to overtake it because I'm very intelligent. I'm very fast. I'm very, very good. I'm very whatever. And then after a while, though, it starts to dawn on us. I've been really trying for a long time, and there's something very odd here. It starts to dawn on us. Something very strange is happening, which is that I don't seem to actually be getting within reach. And this is why they say the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. Because that's really it. With the closer we get, the more we realize that in that what we might say is this tiny little space between where we are and our goal, infinity is in that space. It's too big. We'll never cross it. So we have to do this thing. We have to make this effort before we realize it's not going to work. Which is why this is a rare message, because most of the time we haven't gotten to that point to realize it's not going to work. But the good news is that when we are, when we're chasing after this illusion of what we think we want, we don't realize that we are generating our own bondage. We are generating our own suffering in that pursuit. That the very notion that there is something to attain is what gives rise to the sense that there's something missing. It's because we're chasing after something that we believe or perceive that there is some problem. And so when we get to this point of realizing the impossibility of achieving what we've set out to achieve, we're now finally, we're at the true beginning. Everything else prior to this was just preparation. Now we're really ready to begin. And what we're ready to begin is this relaxation, relax into health, wealth, and happiness. Because we thought health, wealth, and happiness was something to acquire or attain out ahead of us. But we have to do something to get that. Even notice if you're going to relax, you have to do something to relax. If I say relax, you say, oh, well, hold on, let me get in the right position. Let me get my pillows set up so I can really relax. So it's conditional. And what I'm describing here is that it's uh, unconditional, and it has nothing to do with control. It has nothing to do with purification. It has nothing to do with being a better person. It has nothing to do with managing yourself. It has nothing to do with any of what we've been led to believe that it has to do with. Because all of that, you see, is still conditional. It still has to do with there's something that must be done, and you must do it, and then you will be worthy, and it will be granted to you because you will have done what was needed. So not only is it conditional, but it sets it up that there's something external to you that is going to grant it to you. Now, just see, this basic setup is one in which you're the cosmic infant, and you're beseeching the cosmic parent. You're saying, big mommy, big daddy, look at me, I'm so good, I'm so attractive, I'm so pleasing. Please give me what I want. And that has never given you what you wanted. That's been the game that we've been playing. We've been playing that game all along. We were trained to play that game. It's not anybody's fault. It was how we were trained. But just look to see, for as long as you can remember, that's how you've been doing it. You've been playing this game of big mommy, big daddy. Look how pleasing I am. Now reward me. And conversely, there's, oh, big mommy, big daddy, I'm so shameful. I'm so bad. I'm not worthy yet. So that's bondage. And there's no one who can give you the freedom from that. It can only be granted by you, and it can only be granted by you through the direct knowledge, which is why I say that this is an active relaxation. It's not a passive relaxation. It's not, let's zone out, numb ourselves, try and get rid of anything. It's not like that. It's you notice what we normally think of relaxation. It's a numbing. It's to get rid of something. It's to get rid of whatever we consider to be not relaxation. We want to get rid of the aches, the pains, the frustrations, the tension, and so forth. But that it generates, that is actually the attempt to do that is maintains this process of the bondage. So paradoxically, when we completely give up on that false notion of relaxation, we discover true relaxation. which is a unconditional freedom that's available now, and it's granted only to yourself, by yourself, of direct realization, direct knowledge, which is why I say you have to look for yourself. Just look for yourself right now and see that there's nothing that can be called bondage other than just this mistaken belief in the validity of this voice of discontent that says, this isn't it. This isn't good enough. This isn't right. Something's wrong. Just see it. So how do you know? How do you know if this is seen? So normally, we would normally understand, normally we would think that I've seen something or I've recognized something because I've had a particular experience that I call an experience of recognition. So it should have certain qualities, and those are qualities that I have accepted are the qualities that define this experience. But see, that there's no actual objective uh, way of knowing this. It's totally self-constructed, self-defined. This is why I'm saying this is a complete game, not necessarily a pleasant game, but it's a game, and it's of your own construction. So you want liberation, you have to choose that liberation now. So it's not dependent upon any particular experience. That's important, because if it's dependent upon a particular experience, then when that experience goes, which it will, then again you fall back into this game where you say, oh, it's gone and now I'm not free, and how do I get back to freedom? Yet there is this is not to say that experience is completely unhelpful or completely irrelevant, because experience is the vehicle. So we're not trying to get rid of experience either, but rather just to notice that whatever experience is occurring, to see that this experience is occurring in this freedom. So the way in which you actually know is not because of the experience, but it's through the experience. Whatever experience is occurring, you see there's a kind of transparency to the experience, and you recognize through that transparency that there is freedom in which the experience is occurring. So look right now. And just notice that this experience, whatever experience is happening, this experience is happening in freedom. So it's as if uh, there's a habit of looking at the experience, but now it's as if the experience becomes transparent and you see through the experience to the freedom in which the experience occurs. So that as the experience changes, which it does, it's changing now and now and now and now. You see that the that it is always occurring in this freedom. So the particular experience becomes less interesting. But again, this is an active process, so don't wait for it to happen. Rather, look and then choose. The choosing is also important because it's like if you want to jump off of something, you can wait, but the jumping won't happen. So waiting does not bring about the jumping. The jumping actually requires that you take that action to jump off. So that jumping is the choosing. So here there is an action. The action is like jumping. It's a kind of there's an action that yields a release or a surrender. So you can choose that right now. And it's that you just choose to see through the experience and to recognize the freedom in which the experience is occurring. Now, doubts may arise, but here's the important point is to recognize that the doubts all pertain to the experience. They don't have anything to do with freedom. They have everything to do with the experience. So the doubts will be things like, okay, I've had a glimpse, I think, maybe, but how do I sustain that? Just an example of a doubt. It could also be, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I haven't had no glimpse, and I wouldn't even know how to know if I've had a glimpse. How do I get it? Either way, just see that the doubt points to an experience. There's an experience that's being referenced. I want to have some experience, and I want to sustain that experience. But see that there's this critical choice that I'm pointing to. That's why I say it's an active process, because the status quo is to focus on the experience. And so if you're focused on the experience, you're grasping for something that you know that you're looking for something eternal. Hopefully, we'll kind of review just briefly. So you must be looking for something eternal. You know that you won't be satisfied with something temporary because you know that you've had many temporary experiences. And no matter how great the experience, it never leaves you satisfied because it's gone. So what you want is not temporary. You don't want, if I offer you right now, I say, look, you can have, here is an experience. This is the greatest possible experience. There is no higher experience. This is the absolute greatest experience. It's certified, third-party certified by God itself, greatest, highest experience possible. And here it is. I can give it to you. And it will last 5 minutes. Are you interested? You can say yes or no, it doesn't matter. But you know, when I put it that way, that whatever that experience is, it won't be what you really want, because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The end is the part that's really the 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 problem. Because we don't want it to have an end. We want something that's eternal. So you can see you've had all of these experiences, no matter what experience you've had, and therefore no matter what experience you might have, it will not give you what you really want. This has to be clear. So you know that you want something eternal. Now you know that all experience is transient, non-eternal. So if you continue to look at what is transient and you're looking for what is eternal, will you get it? Obviously not. There's no way. There's just no possible way. When I put it so clearly, you have to recognize. Look to your own experience though, and notice all experience is transient. There is no eternal experience. By definition, experience comes and goes. So if you're looking and you're wanting what is eternal, if you continue to look for an experience, you will continue to perceive yourself to be dissatisfied because you're grasping at what is non-eternal and looking for what is eternal. So clearly that won't work, which is why I say it's an active process, because the habit is to continue to look to what is non-eternal, trying to grasp what is eternal. It will never work. That's the habit. That's the status quo. That's the default. If you are passive, that's what continues to happen. The reason it's active is because we have to choose, much like jumping. So it's a one-time choosing, but then it's there's also an ongoing active process of remaining with the choice, which is to choose what is eternal. Now, at first we say, I don't know what's eternal. See, the mind will get very frustrated. It will start throwing a tantrum. It says, sounds like nonsense. I don't even know what's being said. I feel so turned around. Of course I want what's eternal, but you're not telling me where to find it. That's what the mind says. But notice it's still looking for an experience. So all that's being pointed out is, notice what is not an experience. It's not an experience. And you'll say, but I can't, just tell me what it is. I can't find it. I can't tell you what it is because it's not something we can only speak of experience. We can't speak of what is not experience. But that doesn't mean it's not real. It's the prerequisite for all experience. It's just that we overlook it. So it's just keep being pointed out, and then you choose it. And the choosing actually it's another way of phrasing it is just to choose that openness or that freedom in which all experience is occurring. So it's not to reject the experience. The experience is still happening. You notice it's still happening. There's still experience happening. So we're not trying to blot out experience, negate experience, get rid of experience. We're not, for this moment, we're not interested at all in experience. Instead, allow experience to be transparent And then just notice that you can choose this, which is not an experience, which is freedom, and which is not in any way altered by any experience. So then, again, the doubts may come, but see once more that all the doubts have to do with the experience. And it's all about, not only is it about experience, but it's actually about predicting future experience. See, it's neatly, the doubts neatly just dismiss what is, instead of saying, yeah, but what about tomorrow? What about the next day? What about the day after that? How will I get this and hold on to it? And really, it's just to see that the doubts come and go. The doubts don't need to be stopped, but to see that the doubts are coming and going in this same freedom, in this same openness. So that is where we'll leave it for the formal portion today. And for those who are here live, we'll stay on for the Q&A. So I'll end this recording now.